Hi everybody. In this presentation we'll analyze the use of fallacies and pragma dialectics in a letter from 8 white clergymen and the letter from Birmingham jail. Let's start by going over some definitions. Fallacies are common errors in reasoning that will undermine the logic of your argument. Fallacies can be either illegitimate arguments or irrelevant points, and are often identified because they lack evidence that supports their claim. Pragma dialectics, on the other hand, was developed in the speech communication department at the University of Amsterdam by Franz H. Imren and Rob Grutendorst, who asserted that there should be guidelines for argument to maintain fairness. In simple words, pragma dialectics are the set of rules used to analyze and evaluate argumentation in actual practice. Burden of proof is one of the rules of argumentation that states that you should have evidence to support your claim. In the letter from Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King Jr. starts off by explaining what is the evidence for his argument, which was the increasing racial friction in the city of Birmingham. By providing this information, he added power to his letter and helped the reader understand where he's coming from. Jumping into the fallacies, in the letter from Birmingham jail, we found a hasty generalization fallacy, which means making an assertion without all the facts. Martin Luther King Jr. basically states that because of what's going on in Birmingham, there are racial problems everywhere. Even though his statement might have been true, he didn't have evidence to support his claim, which represents a logical fallacy. Continuing with the fallacies, we encounter a case of ad hominem fallacy, which means that the argument is attacking a person or organization instead of the actual idea. Martin Luther King Jr. questions the power and legitimacy of the legislature of Alabama when speaking about the credibility of the laws that were democratically elected. He also mentions how some counties are not doing their part in regards to black people's position among the community. This part of the letter helps the reader understand that the racial issue is not only starting from regular people, but it's also coming from government officials who are not willing to support black people's rights.
The Texas sharpshooter fallacy is when instead of giving you a full spectrum of evidence, which will lead to a logical conclusion, they ignore some things that might contradict what they're saying. And so in this case, the author, he said everything. So he imposed that word kind of imposed that he believes whatever he says after is right because everything Hitler did was legal. And that's why it is okay, and everything Hungarian freedom fighter did was illegal. So using the word everything kind of keep you from the whole spectrum of what they did in the past, which for sure they didn't do everything legal and they didn't do everything illegal, but just using the word everything makes you believe that whatever he's saying is right. So the either or fallacy, also known as false dilemma, the author gives you two opposite sides and they are opposed to each other. And if you don't pick the correct side, you're going to have this sad, terrible outcome that the author is going to give you. And so in this case, it's kind of backwards. It says it gives you the outcome first. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So injustice threats injustice is the outcome of not picking the right side, which is what they did. So he said, never again we can afford to live with the narrow provincial outsider agitator idea. So because they picked this idea, they had injustice, which leads to threat justice. And then the right side would be to never consider those that live inside of the U.S. an outsider. And so this is the either or fallacy. A usage rule. So the usage rule, the party must not use formulations that are insufficiently clear or confusing. They must be carefully and accurately as possible. So here he kind of states what the other side of the party is doing. He says that in this sense they have been publicly nonviolent. But then he asks a question, but for what purpose? And he gives you for me, was a non-accurate answer, which was based on his own belief. And so he said it's to preserve the evil system of segregation. And so here he broke the usage rule.
Hello, my name is Braden Tackett, and today I'm going to be talking about logical fallacies within the MLK Birmingham Jail packet, as well as the letter from Birmingham Jail. First, I'd like to talk about straw man argument, I guess is what it would be called. My quote is, "Hatred and violence have no sanction in our religious and political traditions." The reason I say this is a straw man argument is because it would be to say as if nobody has ever had violence or was in a violent religion of sorts, and saying that that doesn't belong in his religion. That would be to speak for all people within the religion, and I would say that that is a straw man argument. And I would be able to poke holes through that argument simply by saying, well, what church can have this then? The next argument that I would be making, or the next logical fallacy I would be talking about, would be the circular argument. The circular argument is when you make an argument and you talk in circles. So I used this example from the packet. So I am here along with several members of my staff because we were invited here. I am here because I have basic organizational ties here. Because of this, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. So he basically was saying I'm in Birmingham because I'm in Birmingham. I think that this could have been written a lot better, and it could have been written in a more clear way, and perhaps a more concise way of saying I'm here because of the things that I've the political views that I have, or something similar to that, rather than talking in circles here. This argument is really easy to poke holes in as well, and I think if Martin had spent a little bit more time thinking about a better way to write this argument, I feel like it would have been a lot more powerful and a lot more sticky for people to listen to, and it would have stuck a lot more for his readers. The next logical fallacy I would like to talk about, this is the final one that I will be talking about, is casual fallacy. And my quote that I took was, "Just as in 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried their 'Thus saith the Lord' far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I too compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I can constantly respond to the Macedonia call for aid." The causal fallacy in this, I would say, is identifying the cause. And so a causal fallacy is like, it's like an unproven cause. So he's saying that he's like Paul, but he's unable to prove that he's like Paul. He's saying he's like Paul because he feels he's like Paul, rather than other people like saying this. So it's kind of like a personal opinion about himself, and I would say that this would be considered a casual fallacy simply because of the fact that he identified himself as this rather than someone else doing so.
Pragma dialectics was developed to study the entirety of an argumentation as a discourse activity. It also involves rules for a critical discussion. Violations of the discussion rules are said to frustrate the reasonable resolution of the difference of opinion, and they are therefore considered as fallacies. The validity rule could be considered violated in a call for unity text. The validity rule means a party may only use arguments in its argumentation that are logically valid or capable of being made logically valid by making explicit one or more expressed premises. The fallacy found in this text is the appeal to authority fallacy. While appeals to authorities are by no means always fallacious, they can quickly become dangerous when you rely too heavily on the opinion of a single person, especially if that person is attempting to validate something that is outside of their expertise. Getting an authority figure to back up your position can be a powerful addition to an existing argument, but it can't be the pillar to your entire argument. Just because someone is in a position of power or believes something to be true doesn't make it true. In the A Call of Unity, the author cites several bishops and religious authorities to back up his argument. Another rule that is broken is the relevance rule. This rule indicates that a party may defend a standpoint only by advancing argumentation relating to the standpoint. The letter from Birmingham jail shows an example on how this rule is not being as quite respected entirely. The relevance rule is not being respected properly because of the anecdotal fallacy. In place of logical evidence, this fallacy substitutes examples from someone's personal experience. Arguments related to this fallacy tend to overlook the fact that one possibility isolates examples and can't stand alone as proof. In this example, Martin Luther King Jr. is addressing a Bible experience and relating it to his beliefs and future actions. Thank you so much to everybody that listened to our audios and presentation, and we hope you liked it very much. Thank you and have a good rest of the week.